What advice do you have for an agent just coming into this?
A lot of people talk specifically about saving up 6 months worth of reserves.
Because you don't make money instantly, right?
Right. But the only thing people talk about when they're talking about saving up for reserves is talking about your personal living expenses. You also have to have money to invest in your business. That's a huge thing that I never see people say online is it's more than just your personal expenses. You have to have business expenses saved up too.
So, Emily, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Beautiful. Are we gonna do the thing?
What up, fools?
There we go. We got Emily here today, so that's gonna be fun. So, Emily, how's it going? This is our first time actually meeting in person. So nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
Aside from the whole packing up or unpacking and stuff like that with the cameras, we talked a little bit. But how's it going? How's life?
Good. Busy. Trying to stay that way at least.
Yeah, we have a few more days till the end of the year. So I guess how's the whole year been so far? I know it's probably been a crazy hectic year. I've watched some of your TikToks. So how's the whole year been so far, 2023?
It's been a good year. We were just talking about how, come every May, June, you look at your goal sheet and you're like, oh, there's no way in hell I'm going to make this happen for the year, which was kind of the position I was in come this past May and June. It was a little bit of a slow start. Part of that, I think, probably was trying to get back into the swing of being full-time work. Maverick turned a year old in July. So he was
January, January you still had an infant.
Little. Yeah. So it was a slow start, but it picked up pretty nicely and I hit my goal. So I can't ask for much more than that.
How do you approach your goals? Because with me, for example, I like to set a goal that I'm pretty confident I'm going to hit, but then I don't want to set a low bar for myself. But then I also don't want to set a bar too high to where it's shit, I'm not going to hit this goal. How do you approach setting your goals?
So goal setting looks different for everybody. And the biggest thing that I find in goal setting is what do you want? Do you want to be able to spend more time with your family? Do you want to just do more business? Do you want to make more money? And so a big thing for me when I'm looking at numbers is how much can I produce with a certain amount of effort? So I don't set goals. My goal for next year is 45 transactions. I want to do $10 million worth of business, which is challenging enough for me, but it's not something that I am going to run myself into the ground trying to do. Time management, especially when you have kids, is the biggest challenge. And so I know that this year I did 35 transactions and sold $8 million and some change worth of real estate with a certain amount of effort. I know that if I tweak some things and do a little bit better on my time management and make some processes a little bit more efficient, then I can push to a higher level.
Are you a procrastinator?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because that's my big bottleneck. Is I'm really fast at getting work done. So the last wedding film I released, I finished it in one day. I've had 3 months to do it. But it's one of those things where I have so many other things going on that it's I put it off until the very last minute. But I feel I do my best work at the last minute. You can't really procrastinate too much with real estate, right?
You can. There are certain things. I am very much I'm very deadline oriented, so if I know that there is a deadline coming up, I will not let something go past the deadline.
Right, you'll wait till the very last second for that deadline.
But I will wait to the last second of that deadline, which I'm sure other agents probably want to strangle me sometimes when it comes to things like that, because if I know something doesn't have to be done until a certain point, it's probably not going to get done before then, especially when it comes to dealing with cooperating agents. When it comes to obviously with a client, there are certain things you can't procrastinate. I can't wait to call you back if you want to go look at a house. But yeah, I am pretty bad about waiting until the last minute to do stuff. And then I panic. My thing is I don't do good work at the last minute.
Oh, really?
It's not a scenario of, oh, this is fine because it'll all work out great in the end. I wait until the last minute to do something and then I get super overwhelmed and panicky and I'm like, oh shit, now I really don't know what I'm going to do. So,
Well, that's what I think the wedding industry for me for, because like, on a wedding day, for example, like it's literally go, go, go. You have to get everything you need in that one day. You have a planner yelling down your neck. You got a photographer that wants to do the things that they want to do. So it's like I've learned how to work and do my best work as quickly as possible. But yeah, it'd be great to like not have to procrastinate and be like, okay, like, yeah, we are 2 weeks ahead of schedule. We're good to go. One thing I didn't start the podcast off with obviously like who you are, what you do. So for the people that are actually watching, what's your name and what do you actually do?
Okay, so my name's Emily McAllister, and I am a real estate agent in Greenville, which is where we are located. Greenville, North Carolina.
Not South Carolina.
Greenville, South Carolina. Yeah. The other Greenville. I cannot tell you how many times, especially I just joined a company called Real Broker, and they do a lot of conferences because we're a cloud-based firm. And so I was in San Diego in October, and the guy that is my sponsor in this company is from Greenville, South Carolina. And so everybody just, oh, Emily's in Greenville, South Carolina with Bob.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, dude,
And
I do not live there.
It screws up like SEO. It screws up searching for stuff because whenever I do like a shoot, especially on the western side of the state, that's close to Greenville, South Carolina, especially Charlotte area, like, oh yeah, I'm from Greenville, and I have to specify North Carolina because if I don't, there's like, oh, you mean the hop and a skip over here in South Carolina?
No.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Greenville, South Carolina?
No.
Neither have I. I've
I've heard it's pretty nice. You know when they did the what is the show that A&E did here with the
right here in
jail.
the courthouse.
Yeah, it was like it's not Beyond Scared Straight
60
or 60 Days In or something.
Yeah.
And they used stock footage of Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
See, it's confusing. And then like when you talk about ECU, like there was something recently that Las Vegas shooter that was like an old professor at ECU. So I think the police chief of Vegas like gets on the TV and he's giving his little press conference and he's like, Eastern North Carolina University. It's like, no, it happens every single time.
Yeah.
East Carolina University. So how'd you get into real estate? So were you like the 2020 bubble where you're just like, or did you get in before that?
I was before that.
Awesome. So tell me all about that.
I got my license in 2017. And I went to work for a local firm here. I had been working as an assistant for someone that used to do business with my dad years and years and years ago. And that just was not a good fit for me. And I worked for Homer Tire for a couple of years when I first got in the business. He was a family friend. My grandfather.
Did we ever meet each other through there? Okay.
I don't think so. He is one of those like rare birds that is a really good salesperson and also a really great mentor.
Yeah.
Most good salespeople are not great teachers.
Yeah.
But Homer does a good job of that. But anyway, I went to work for him to begin with. And I mean, that was really good for me. Like I learned a lot working underneath of him. And I just outgrew the position and went into a different firm. And
him and Rachel are like a wealth of knowledge. So especially like when it comes to, cause I know Rachel handles like a lot of like the back end stuff, like the financials. But like Homer talks in sound bites, which is really fun. So I remember like when it was semi early in me doing my thing, because I've been doing this for 12 years now. I want to say it was somewhere around like 2015, 16 is when me and Homer linked up and started doing some stuff. But like you learn something from your clients and it rubs off on you and it's like, oh, maybe I should like approach something like this that way in my business.
right.
So after Homer, what happened after that?
So I went to work for another boutique brokerage in town. And that was also not a very good fit. I was there for a little while. It did what it needed to do. Every move that I've made has progressed my career further, and that's really all that I can ask for. And then I ended up at Keller Williams, and then now I'm with Real Broker.
And that's kind of like the progression of like what happens in every industry, right? Like typically you start off somewhere and you grow and then you go on to something else. And now, so throughout that whole time since 2017, you've always been a 1099 employee. That's how real estate works, right? Commission only sales.
Yep.
So tell me about that, because I was having a conversation with someone the other day about you have the 9-to-5ers and that are like comfortable with what they make every year. They're not going to make more, they're not going to make less, but it's guaranteed. Then you have the 1099ers who like, we don't know how much we're going to make the next year. We have goals and we have kind of like a history to look back on. But aside from that, sky's the limit. We can shoot for whatever we want for. Speak on that, I guess, the 1099 deal. What's good about it? What's bad about it?
I think that a lot of people underestimate the benefit and the advantage that 1099 employees have, being that we only have one tax bill. Like, The fact that taxes are not taken out, and it's very intimidating to some people if they make the switch from a W-2 employee to a 1099, having a large tax bill at the end of the year.
Because you're actually paying attention to what is taken out. Yeah.
Right. But you have access to the funds for an entire 12 months to grow and invest and to shelter before you have to pay that bill. And so that is a huge, I really think a lot of people underestimate how beneficial that can be just in the way that we get paid, because we don't have to, taxes aren't taken out of every single check that we get. The 1099 thing, I know it can be very intimidating to people to not know when they're going to get paid. It doesn't really intimidate me. It did at first, anytime you make that initial switch, but at this point I've been doing it long enough, I pretty much know what to expect. But I am one of those people that views the whole sky is the limit thing as opportunity and as a challenge. And it's so funny because I had this conversation with somebody else who was describing in leaving their 9 to 5, the thought process of what a lot of people I think would look at W-2 as being a very safe, reliable, I know every other week this is what I'm going to get paid. And this guy was like, I hated it. Because it didn't matter how much work I did or did not do. I was never going to make more than X amount of dollars. And he very much saw that as a limit. And so that's kind of how I feel. I didn't know that that's how I felt about it until he articulated that, but that's kind of how I feel about it. So I would not be able to work W-2 because I would definitely take the stance of, why would I work harder than what's necessary, because I'm not going to reap any benefit to that.
And I've noticed that so much with clients that I work with. So for example, if I have multiple clients that have big companies and stuff like that, and then I work with an employee of that company, and I feel like I'm more invested in their product than their own employees are, because I know that if I bust my ass and I work hard, that this company is going to continue to pay me and hire me and do stuff like that. Whereas the employees that I'm shooting with, 9 times out of 10, which is actually really sad when you think about it, 9 times out of 10, it's just oh yeah, it's 5 o'clock. I'm with my family, which I respect.
Dude, I can't fault them for that.
I respect it, but at the same time, it's you can give me 5 minutes, right? Yeah. So how do you do the whole family balance thing? I mean, you have a little one. How do you do the whole work-life balance? Because it seems on social media, you're go, go, go.
I'm not.
So tell me that process.
It is very easy for me to portray the go, go, go. That's something that I have struggled with since Maverick was born, and in becoming a mom is I am being productive at all hours of the day, even if I'm not working. And so Maverick goes to preschool every day for half of a day. And I have 4 hours a day to get done the clerical things that I need to get done that I can't do when he is with me. And so time management, like we talked a little bit about before we started recording, is paramount. It is so important. I cannot, and that's not to say that I'm the best person at time management. I feel like I'm horrible at time management.
Oh, me too.
But that's what I have to work with. But it can be a challenge because, then we're the type of people that you feel like you're really constantly always working. It's very difficult to turn one completely off and turn the other completely on, and vice versa. But I do my absolute best. I pick him up from preschool at 12 o'clock. We go home, we eat lunch. He takes a 2-hour nap, and then I tie up whatever things that I didn't get done during the day. And then from 3 o'clock on, I have my cell phone, and if there's some sort of emergency, which there are really no emergencies in real estate, but if something needs my immediate attention over the next 2.5-ish hours, then I'll address it. But I try really hard not to dabble in it much past that.
With the whole time management thing, I feel like a lot of people that are like us, that are self-employed, 1099 income, is we never feel like we're good enough. Do you ever feel like that, where you're you are doing really good, your business is booming, you're bringing in a lot of money, you get to go on the vacations and travel and all that, but you're always just what I'm doing is not good enough. I could be doing something way better. I
constantly am what I'm doing just isn't that hard. That's my thought process. And somebody told me it creates a scenario where because I'm so hard on myself, I'm hard on other people because I'm looking at myself thinking, well, if what I'm doing isn't that hard, what you're doing really can't be that, it also can't be that hard. Like you also should be able to do what I'm doing because I'm doing it and I don't feel like I'm doing anything special.
People are also way too soft these days.
I agree. I agree. People, it's a little bit of both. A little bit of both. But it does, like I am speaking at an event at the end of January. And it's a big deal to be invited to speak in front of anybody, to be invited to speak. And I'm like, I don't even know why they have asked me to do this because I don't look at the things that I've done and think that it's a big deal. I just think that I'm doing the shit that I'm supposed to do.
How much does that play a role in it? Do you think like if people like, especially people that may be like struggling financially, like maybe they're self-employed, maybe they're in real estate, and they just haven't like hit that stride yet, how much of it do you think has to do with them just not putting forth the effort and actually focusing on the work that they need to do?
I think a lot of people don't put forth the effort. I have gone round and round with people about this on the internet. And one of like my biggest qualms with real estate in particular is our, failure rate. Like 95% of agents fail within the first, I think it's like 3 years. I don't know. It's some astronomical, absurd amount.
Well, especially when you have like a year like 2020 where
Right.
it was easy to sell a house.
Right.
Like, how do you overcome that now when you were able to easily just walk out the door, sell a house for $30,000 over asking price, and now we're in this market where it's like they're not really selling as they were.
This is where to me it gets fun.
Oh, for sure. It's a challenge.
Right, it's a challenge. And so, especially with listings, like I felt like beforehand when I was putting things on the MLS and they're selling immediately, I'm like, I'm getting paid, which is great, but I'm not like being challenged. I'm not having to really think hard and outside of the box and like be creative about how to get this thing gone. And so even just with the most recent listing I put up, I've been able to do more stuff in terms of marketing that was not only fun and enjoyable for me to do, but my client has been impressed with because it's outside of the box. So it gives me more of an opportunity to prove myself as an even better agent. Anybody can put the house on the MLS and it go under contract in a couple of days in the market like what we were dealing with in 2020, 2021. But now's my time to shine because I can take that dead space and show a client like these are all of the things that are being done that are above and beyond every other agent in town.
What advice do you have for someone new coming into real estate when their first thought is like, oh, this is not as easy as like the 2020s, 2021 where you could just sell a house super easy. Now they look at it as like there's so much competition out there and there's so few houses out there. What advice do you have for an agent just coming into this?
I get a lot of questions on social media like, is now a good time to go into the industry? Which I think is a horrible question. Now is only a good time if you're committed to making it work. And even in 2020, 2021, if you weren't committed to making it work, it would be a shit time for you to go get your real estate license. And so it really is just a matter of, I think a lot of people don't look at this as a business. They look at it more of like we're not selling Mary Kay. Like, no hate to anybody that sells Mary Kay, but this is not like, here's your package, like, go out and talk to people. Like, you really have to look at this as an entrepreneurial thing.
You're selling investments.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you're selling yourself in the most appropriate way that you can. So you have to create a brand for yourself. You have to really be able to fake the confidence that you know what you're doing, especially in the beginning. And you really, you have to devise a plan of, these are all of the things that I'm going to do in order to make this work, and then commit to it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see the biggest mistake I see people make is they have no plan. They go get their real estate license, and then somebody hands them a phone and some business cards, and then they look around and they're like, oh shit, now what do I do? Which is what happened to me. That's part of the reason why when I first joined that first firm, that was not a good fit for me, because I was like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to sell the house or how to find somebody that wants to buy a house any more than the next guy. Like, what am I supposed to do here? And why working for Homer was so invaluable, because he taught me how to sell. And so that's the biggest thing, is people don't have a plan, and picking the wrong mentor can also be very detrimental.
I have a client, and we talk about mentorship all the time, and you actually said something that stuck out with, you get asked on social media all the time, is now a good time for me to take this shot to actually become a real estate agent? And it brought me back to an interview I recently did where the guy was just like, at what point are you going to take a risk on yourself? Because if you look back, when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you're just like, wow, I never took that shot. Now at this point, you're kind of, that shot's already gone. It's too late to do it now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you have to go ahead and take that shot when you want to. Even if you don't think it's the right time, try it. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, at least you know you took that shot. So when it comes down to mentorship, who were your mentors in this? I know you mentioned Homer with the sales type of thing. How important is mentorship to you in this business?
In this business, especially in the beginning, mentorship is invaluable. Like, there are so many things that you just cannot possibly know because you don't know them. You don't know what questions to ask because you don't know what things may potentially arise throughout the course of a transaction. And so Homer in particular was not only really good at the real estate knowledge, but he's also a really great salesperson. And so just like the social EQ of sales, and knowing what to say and in what tone, and like when to pull back and how often to follow up, and all of those things, that I also read a lot of books in the beginning. I probably should get back to that because I don't know everything. But those types of things is like more of like a sales strategy is what I spent a lot of time focusing on when I first got into the business. And even now, I think the mentorship is still there, but it's evolved into, it looks different. It's not so much as like real estate knowledge necessarily, or like learning how to talk to people and what to say and what not to say. It's more of like being able to collaborate with other agents that aren't necessarily in this market, that are in more metro areas, that see things a little bit faster than I do because they're in a much larger town or city.
I didn't think about that, because I guess if you're looking at like a big metropolitan area, like those effects are going to trickle down to the more rural areas like this.
Right. And so that having access to that is also really important, in my opinion, and to be able to, brainstorm and pick the brains of those agents that are in larger areas, because they see more, because there's more there. And so that the mentorship has evolved into looking more of something along those lines.
Now, whenever we talk about sales, people always like think of, I'm going to get shit on one day about the whole grimy car salesman thing. I'm going to have like car salesmen come after me and like come to my house with like pitchforks and everything. But that's what I always relate it to, because like you pull up to a lot, and even if you're just there to like get an oil change or just something, it's just like, hey, you want to buy a car? I bet you this would be good for you, even if you're not looking for a car. When you are selling a piece of real estate, people are looking to buy property.
Right. Real estate is a sales cycle, and there is a process to the sale of a home, but it's not sales in the sense that we are trying to encourage or convince somebody to do something that they don't or can't want to do. Real estate in particular is kind of like a very interesting beast, because not anybody can just go out and buy a house. You have to have, special approval with a special type of financing.
Qualification letters.
Correct. And so it's a very intentional thing to seek out a property to purchase or to sell. And so the sales cycle is more about selling a service, selling what I can do for you to make your life easier throughout something that you have to do anyway. So it's a little bit different than the grimy car salesman thing.
They're going to come after you now too.
Right, I know, that's fine. There's a lot of things people come after me for. We can just add that to the list. But it is much different of a process than just, hey, do you want to buy my Mary Kay? Hey, girly.
Now, you said you're not a people person. So, you know, for those that know you, like they know about your social media presence and stuff like that. Is that like an outlet for you? Like, how did that whole thing come about? Because you blew up on TikTok, right?
I've never had somebody describe it as an outlet, but I think it probably kind of is. Yeah, I was one of those people that I was like, I'm not downloading that Chinese bullshit on my phone. And then one day I just downloaded it and started messing around and was like, well, I reckon like I'll make an account for work. And there is an agent in Raleigh. Her name's Ginger Vereen. I think her married name is Peters. I always forget what her last name is. But she is with Keller Williams out of Raleigh, and she told me when I first got into the business, one of the best things I could do was to like share my goals, like tell the consumer like this is what my goal is, and that like I took that to heart, and that was one of the very first videos that I made that went viral was like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is my goal.
Well, it's kind of like you put your goals out there, then it's
Well, it holds you
it's
accountable.
accountability. Yeah.
And hold you accountable. And another thing she said to me was, like anytime you have a past client or see somebody, like is to give someone a metric that they can hit. Like, hey, instead of open-ended, like if you know anybody looking to buy or sell real estate, send them my way. Like, hey, do you know, can you send me one person? Because if you talk to 50 people and 50 people send you one person, like it's a lot easier for people to process that versus just, hey, if you know anybody looking, that just gets lost into the abyss. But yeah, it has become somewhat of an outlet for me, because I just get up there and ramble, dude. Like I talk about work and I talk about the behind the scenes stuff. And a lot of my platform is very much, I have unintentionally created a platform where people follow me because I say all of the shit that everybody else is thinking, which is somewhat intimidating because then I go through phases where I'm like, I'm tired and I don't want to be bullied for saying all of the things that everybody else is thinking.
Do you do the whole Joe Rogan thing and not read the comments, or do you read
No,
the comments?
I read every single comment, which I probably shouldn't do.
Well, so we always talk about how social media is very unhealthy, but from a business standpoint, it's like the best thing you can possibly do. But then at the end of the day, we're all people as well. So you read those comments and it's just like, okay, I made 1 million people happy, but this one person right here is pissed and they're calling me out about this and that. It's like, how do you react to that? So how does that affect you like mentally? I guess when you're reading these comments, tell me about that. Post and ghost.
Part of yeah, I wish I could do that. I can't. It's like I'm literally like a crackhead looking at my phone. But I think it gets to the point where it kind of wears off. Like initially, when I first started having stuff go really viral and people like would comment bullshit, it was hurtful, or it would make me mad, or like just make me want to argue. Like that's where the whole let's argue thing came from. At this point, I'm like, whatever, and it's more entertaining to me to like play into it. Like I was on a live last night and somebody was like, hey, I like your mustache, and I was like, thanks. Like that's, to me, that's like the best way, Russian bot. Right? That's probably the best way to respond to that kind of thing, or to just not respond to it at all. At this point, it doesn't really bother me. Every now and again, I'll get like a weird DM or like just some way out of pocket comment, which I'm like just narcissistic enough to think there's no way this person is not like, this is not a spoof account for somebody that knows me personally. I very much get in my head that some stuff that I'm like, a random person just would not say that in particular. Like there's no way that this is not somebody that knows me in real life. I do think that happens probably more often than what I even realize, that it's like people that
Well, it comes back to like, you know that you're doing well, and then you just, you want people to, I don't know, social media is such a weird thing. So like with me in my business, I guess the example that I can relate it to is, for a while I was like posting my work to different groups that are like in the space that I was in. And I started to listen more to what they were saying than what my clients were saying. And I actually saw a downturn in business because I was trying to make my work look and feel like the way that all these other people that have no experience want it to look. Whereas I stopped doing what was working for me for all those years. And I let that shit go 5 years ago. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to post to this group and we're just going to see what it goes. All the comments that are good, I'll thank you for
Yeah.
responding. But aside from that, is this like a competition based thing, or do you have friends that are local that are also real estate agents that you guys get to actually come together and just talk shit about the problems and all that?
Yeah, I think you have to be careful, obviously, because this is like dog eat dog,
That is true. Because if you're in the same market,
especially if you're in the same market.
yeah.
And so there are a handful of agents, though, that are local that I'm very close with that I would feel more than comfortable, like if I had a question or like needed to bounce an idea off of, picking up the phone and calling and not being worried that that was going to bite me in the ass. Obviously, there are a handful of agents that I would just as soon not ever have to talk to them ever again. But yeah, I mean, I would say I don't really collaborate with local agents in the sense like we don't share strategy or ideas.
But it's not like a spiteful relationship.
No.
Like you see each other and it's like, oh hey, how's it going?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the collaboration definitely comes with people that are in different markets.
Kind of like a community over competition type of thing, where it's like you guys can all learn from each other and this and that. Because I mean, that's how it is with my industry. I mean, I'm not the only videographer in Greenville. There was a time where there were only like 3 or 4 of us, and that's back like 12 years ago when I first started this whole thing. But now it's like anyone can go buy a camera. So
Right.
yeah. So now, are you currently? You have people that reach out to you all the time, asking you questions and stuff like that. How does that feel now that you're actually able to sit in a chair and answer people's questions rather than being the one asking questions, like the mentorship side of things again?
I would say for me personally, my biggest challenge is that sometimes I need to remind myself that I am not done being the mentee. That's probably been the biggest shift for me over the past couple of years is like people will begin to ask you questions and you're like, oh, I know a little something about a little something, and I want to hear myself talk. So I'll sit down and talk. But I do need to be more intentional about reading and picking up books and listening to the things that other people have to say because I don't know everything. And I think sometimes that maybe can go to my head a little bit.
Do you feel like you are ever done learning?
No, there's always something else that I can know.
How important is that mindset? Because there's a humble mindset that has to come into play, especially when you own a business. Is you don't know everything. There's always someone out there that you can learn from. There's always someone out there that's doing something better than you. So being able to sit down and be humble and notice like, hey, there's always something that I can learn, but there's also something that I can give to newer agents as well. So talk to me a little bit about the, not knowing everything on that side of things, but also kind of being kind of a humble leader, if that makes sense.
I think it's created a scenario where I am constantly looking for somebody that's done more than me. Like, okay, show me, I want to see your numbers. I want to see your metrics. I want to see some sort of justification for why you can teach me something that I don't already know, which I probably need to let go of that. That's probably not the best mindset to have because, I mean, I could learn something
Well, it's like a
from,
proof of concept type of deal too.
right, but I could learn something from some random Joe Blow down the street that I didn't know.
That's not in real estate.
That's not in real estate. And so that probably needs to go away. But that is a reflection of how I feel about myself, is because I feel like I need to show other people a proof of concept. This is why you should listen to the things that I have to say, is because here are my metrics, here's my social media, here are all the things that I've done. And so that is a big challenge for me. I like the idea with this new company. We do a lot of conferences and having agents come in from all over the United States and being able to connect, top producers from multiple markets in the same room and like let them bounce ideas off of each other. Has been very beneficial.
I think the conferences are a huge deal.
I love conferences.
So like I've only been to one conference in my industry, but one of my clients, they're a big insurance firm. So their big thing is they sell insurance of all types. And they have conferences multiple times a year. And whenever they invite me to these conferences to actually film content and stuff like that, I get fired up because of all of just the motivational stuff, hearing the stories about like why they got into that industry and where they came from to where they are now. It's super inspiring. And that brings me to another point about like when you reach a slump or a plateau. A lot of people, especially in business, they reach that plateau and it's kind of like they can't break past that goal that they set for themselves, and they just that's the goal that they hit every single year now. How do you break past, I guess, a slump? Have you ever been in a slump before? What do you do to turn it around?
I have definitely been in a slump before. I think for people, I think you were talking about two different concepts. So if you're somebody that if you get to the point where you're like, I'm consistently hitting this number and I can't seem to move past that, that's a leverage issue.
Because that's
You
kind of
need
like
to-
your plateau.
Right. It's because you physically do not have the manpower or the bandwidth to do more than that. And so now it's time to leverage. You either need some sort of system or another person. You need to make a hire in order to like push you past that, whatever that cap is that you're hitting.
Let's talk about that first then.
Okay.
Let's talk about like I guess the plateau and the leverage and stuff like that. Have you gotten to that point? I know
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think, obviously last year was a little bit different for me because Maverick was born. So that was, obviously that was still a year towards my career, but there was a lot of other things going on. So it wasn't, I don't like count that towards like my general progression.
because it's hard to kind of like let that control go of something that you grew. Because I look at my business like my third child. Like it's my baby, and I don't want to give that control away. And trusting someone with that kid is hard. Like how do you like? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we mentioned before we started recording, I literally just a couple of weeks ago hired a transaction coordinator. And I really think that is going to make a world of a difference for my business for 2024. My biggest thing is I am a control freak, and so I want things done a certain way. But I think my issue in making a hire is that I don't want to spend the time training somebody to do what I want them to do. I just want
A job
them
that you
to,
can easily train.
I
So,
just
yeah.
want them to be able to absorb. Then I want them to be able to read my mind and know what I want them to do, and then go do it. And so this like setup with this transaction coordinator is really great because she already knows how to do transaction coordination. It's just like she's a contract employee. She's a 1099. And so that has been for me personally like the biggest limiting factor in hiring somebody else.
Take something off of your plate so that way you can focus on like the big ticket items. Yeah.
And it improves my quality of life because even if it only results in 4 extra transactions for the year, it's one less thing that I have to think about. And it's something that's being handled well, because if I'm handling it, I'm procrastinating. I'm waiting until the last minute to send somebody the stock or to get a signature. And so I don't even have to think about it. I just know that it's being handled and it's been being done in a timely manner. And that in and of itself, to me, is worth the additional cost of having to pay her to handle that. Even if it doesn't result in additional net profit. If it's just, hey, you're paying for yourself because you're freeing up some time, but you've improved my quality of life.
So let's talk about the slump part now. So you've been in real estate since 2017. Did you ever feel like you hit a point where maybe you just didn't even think that you were cut out for this job? Like maybe you just didn't think you were good enough for the job? How did you overcome that? Did you ever have that point? Tell me about that.
After I left working for Homer and I went to work for the boutique brokerage here in town, and then at that point, Homer's office is structured, it's a team structure. So I was a buyer agent only, I wasn't doing any listings, and I was being given leads. And so when I left, and it transformed into, I have to now handle all of the all of the behind the scenes aspects that were being handled for me, I have to be responsible for. That was very intimidating, and part of the reason why it was such a massive jump for me to leave that office. And there was a time, probably like 90 days, 3-4 months-ish after I left Homer's office, that I was like, holy shit, what have I done? And I don't know if I can do this without somebody holding my hand.
What turned that around?
My pride will not allow me to quit. And so I would never have in a million years picked up the phone and been like, Homer, I need my job back. Like the thought of doing that, alone was like, I don't have a choice but to figure out how to make this work. And it was never an option to quit, because that would have been equally as embarrassing. Then everybody would know that I had failed, not just Homer. And so I was like, I do not, there is no other option than for me to figure out how to make this happen. And I think it was very shortly after that that I was like, let me dabble in this social media thing a little bit and see what goes on over here. And
so it's kind of like you picked a new route, and like, it was kind of like a new route of marketing and getting yourself out there. And is that when kind of business started to pick back up for you? Like, let's go to the flip side of it now. At what point did you realize like you made the right decision and this was working for you, and this is something that you could definitely turn into a long-term career?
I don't know that there was ever actually like a moment that like that stands out as being, it clicked for me, like a light bulb moment. When I finished out 2021 and had as strong of a year as I did, and I'm a pretty competitive person, so I'm like constantly looking at the MLS roster to see like where do everybody's sales fall, and how do I shape up to the business that other agents are doing. And to see like my name up there with other people that I would consider to be leaps and bounds more experienced and more established, at that point I was like, okay, I might be onto something here. Like, I'm certainly not the best, because there's 35 people ahead of me in this MLS, but there's some potential for me to really make some waves in this industry, and I'm gonna double down and see where we can take this.
I've never actually thought about this before until you just said that, but I feel like it's actually always a good thing to always be in like second or third place, because you're always looking at that next person, like how can I beat them? Because then, if you get to the first place mark, then you could either keep that traction going, or you just fall back into that, oh, I'm the best at this, I don't need to learn anymore. And then you start falling back down in the lines again.
Right.
What advice do you have for an agent just coming into this? I mean, what do they have to do? What's the very first thing? After they pass their test, of course.
After you pass your test, I think the mental commitment is huge. I think a lot of people go into it just like we talked about and think, well, I'm just going to dabble in this and see where it goes. You have to like really make the mental commitment. Like, it's just not an option for me to quit this, because this industry is so cutthroat and has such a high rate of withdrawal. You have got to have a better mindset when you go into it. Having a plan would be the second thing. How am I going to get clients? What kind of goals are realistic for me? What do I want out of this business? Do I want to go into a team where I'm going to be being given leads, and my hand is going to be held a little bit more, versus do I want to be left alone because I'm like very much a complete self-starter and don't need any accountability, which that's bullshit. Everybody needs some accountability. And then the third thing would be, a lot of people talk specifically about saving up 6 months worth of reserves for expenses.
Because you don't make money instantly, right?
Right. It takes a little while for you to start making money. But the only thing people talk about when they're talking about saving up for reserves is talking about your personal living expenses. Nobody starts a business with only money for their personal living expenses. You also have to have money to invest in your business. There are way more expenses here, especially in the startup processes that are involved than what people anticipate, like just the cost of getting the license, joining the MLS board, joining NAR, all those kind of things. And then if you want money to buy business cards and buy signs and start a website and pay for leads and pay for Google SEO and to do all of these other things, typically most of which are contract and subscription based services, you have to have the funds to pay for all of those things too. That's a huge thing that I never see people say online, is it's more than just your personal expenses. You have to have business expenses saved up too.
And it takes us back to that point of kind of being prepared, to jump into that, like that ability where you pass the test, you're selling real estate now. Is this something that someone that just does it part-time can be successful at? Or do you really need to, save up for that 6 months worth of expenses and then have some business expenses bubble in there too? Is this something that you can actually do good without putting your full effort into it?
I think if you are somebody that wants to try to ease into the business without like jumping in completely and making a full commitment, your only option is to join a team and to go to work for somebody that you have a mentor directly above you, you're being provided leads, you're being taught how to work the leads, and then to slowly back off whatever your other source of income is. I waited tables when I first got into the business, and I very quickly was like, okay, if this is something that I want to have a real shot at making this work, I have to fully commit to this, because what was happening is I would have somebody call me on a Tuesday and say, hey, can you go this afternoon at 7 o'clock to show this house? And I couldn't go because I was working. And so it was a massive scheduling conflict. And luckily at the time, my expenses were relatively low, so it didn't take me many closings to get to the point where I felt comfortable making the jump. But in terms of doing it part-time, joining a team would definitely be the way to go, in my opinion. And just if you're somebody that only wants to do it part-time, it can be done, but it takes a tremendous amount of intentionality. Like, you have to be really intentional about the time spent to pay attention to the market trends and, time management, all that kind of thing. If you're like, I only want to do this 10, 15 hours a week.
What's the biggest misconception that you see in the real estate industry? Like, is there something that you just run into, I guess, a lot, that people aren't in your world? And like for example, like I said, we bought a couple of houses before. Mm-hmm. We're on our third one now. We are not moving for a while. So I'm not going to need your services for a while. But when we were looking at it, I remember when we bought our first house, we were like, do we need a real estate agent? Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, yeah, in order to buy a house, you need one. But then we also were on the selling side too. Mm-hmm. We tried the whole for sale by owner thing. Stupid. It was the dumbest thing that we ever did.
You don't realize how much it is until...
Well, because I had my whole ego inflated. I was just like, oh, I'm a photographer. I can do my own real estate photos. Mm-hmm. And then I hired Houseo to go ahead and put me on the housing market or the MLS and stuff like that. It got nothing at all. And the reason why is because was it listing agents or the people that show the house? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Buyer agents.
Yeah, buyer agents. They don't want to do that because they want to actually work with another real estate agent that knows the process and stuff like that. Tell me about FSBOs.
So I get a lot of shit online about that right there. Well, a buyer agent they won't call me or blah, blah, blah. And about how that's steering and it's against the ethical rules and this, that, and the other. It's not steering. Whether or not it's ethical or whether or not it should be done that way, we could have an argument about that. But you're right. If I see something to me, the number one thought that runs through my brain, if I see something that's in the MLS that's like a limited service, it's a FSBO and somebody's just paid a flat fee, is this is an unreasonable person. That's my immediate thought. And most of the time the houses are overpriced. Most of the time they have horrible listing photos, which I'm sure yours were great because
they weren't.
Yeah.
I didn't know the rules about real estate photography.
It's way overpriced, which that's another thing that's really indicative of somebody that's just not being reasonable.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. And a buyer most of the time can pick up on those things too. I don't have to look at my buyer and say, hey, this is a for sale by owner and they've paid to get into the MLS and this house is way overpriced. A buyer that is immersed in the market and is paying attention and knows the things that they want out of a property is going to know when something hits the market that's priced as an outlier. And so most of the time it's not even an argument that I have to have or a conversation that I have to have because they already know that. So yeah, I mean, all of what you just said, and especially 2020, 2021, there were a couple of transactions there was one in particular. It was a friend of mine, a girl I went to high school with. She listed her house FSBO. And when I saw it hit, I called her. I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, dude, I don't know because I put this on and my phone has rang off the hook.
I was uneducated when we put our house up
45 minutes.
There. Yeah.
And I can't keep up with and I was like, take it off and I'll be there in 20 minutes. And I went and I took it over and put it in the MLS and handled it. And there's so much more that goes into it. Obviously, part of it is challenging to try to do a for sale by owner if I'm the only agent involved, because I end up doing double the work. I have to do the work for you and the work for my client, and I'm only getting paid for one side. It is a service-based industry. Some people don't like the service or feel like they don't need it. You don't have to use it. You are totally within your right to not use it. I made a TikTok all that long ago because people are bitching like, well, if I want the same results, then I have to use it. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Obvious. Yeah, that's the whole point. Like, I mean, you could go cut your own hair, but if I could dye my own hair, but if I want salon results, I have to go to the salon.
And that's the thing too, is like when you're doing a FSBO, like, and you're not a real estate agent, you don't have access to all the tools that a licensed real estate agent has. So it's not even just about the whole sales thing. Like, let's say like you're the best salesperson in the world, but you're not a real estate agent. You can sell that house, but are you going to close that sale and have to jump through all the hoops? Whereas someone in your field knows the hoops to jump through, knows the people to contact, and stuff like that.
Look, even my mom, she's going to be mad at me for telling this story, but I don't care. They are buying a house at the beach. I don't deal with their stuff in Carteret County because I don't know Carteret County, and because I would prefer that they deal with somebody else. Doing business with family is not always like the best thing.
Nope.
But she buys this house at the beach, and she goes directly to the homeowner and arranges all of this thing, and she messes something up. And who gets the call to fix it? I do. Me. This woman who has done dozens of real estate transactions still messing stuff up because she's trying to bypass certain shit. And I'm the one that gets the phone call to clean it up.
Yeah, I'm sure it's frustrating.
Like, it's my own mother. Like, everybody does it, but it is what it is. But it doesn't bother me, obviously, to help her fix it because she's my mom. I'm going to give her shit, but...
Right. Now you have some rental properties, correct? So let me ask you advice on this. So I recently heard, I don't know who I heard it from, but it was actually like profound when I heard it. And I was like, shit, I really wish we would have done that. So like I said, we're on our third house now. And the advice that I heard was, if you have the ability to not sell your house and turn it into a rental property and then just move to the next house that you want to, that's the way that you should go. Do you agree with that? Like, let's say you have the ability to afford another house, down payment, all that, without selling your current one. Keep it as a rental property or sell it and get rid of it?
So I've done both. So there was a property in Winterville that was my primary residence that I kept as a rental when I moved out. I think the biggest thing for people is, if you have the financial ability to keep your house, your primary residence, as a rental and then buy a new primary residence, if you are not somebody that is immersed in the real estate world, you need to hire property management to handle that. Because I think there are some folks that would, again, not see the value in the service of property management. I don't know exactly like how property management is structured in other areas, but I know around here a lot of places charge like 10% of the rental value. So if the rent is $1,000 a month, then property management collects $100 of that.
But they also handle finding the renter too.
They handle vetting all of the tenants. They handle collecting the money. They handle any sort of maintenance request. They handle everything, and that is worth every single penny, in my opinion.
We've been on that side too.
If you are not somebody that is prepared to be on call 24/7 when your tenant calls you and says, hey, my water heater is broken, it's a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock and I need somebody out here today.
That's exactly what happened with us. Yeah, so we moved out of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, our first house, bought a house in Virginia Beach, lived there for a while. We realized that it was just not for us. Like, we're not former military, anything like that. Nothing against military. It just, we couldn't relate to anyone because I had these neighbors that were like former SEALs and current SEALs, and they're telling me like these amazing stories. I'm like, bro, I got nothing to offer this conversation. So we just realized that it just wasn't the place for us. So we kept the house as a rental property, moved to Winterville where we are now. And it was actually great because even though we had that property, we had a property manager there, $2,500 a month out the door. And with it being a military community, the military was just willing to pay, whatever fair price was available.
Right.
And it was an easy rental. But then once the problems started coming about, the water heater, this thing, that thing, thankfully we had homeowners or renters, not insurance,
You might have had like a home warranty or something.
Home warranty, that thing. That covered our ass completely because we had a gas water heater go out, and that was thousands and thousands of dollars. But I think we paid like, I think 150 or $300 altogether. Got it taken care of.
That's another thing that I think
We sold it right before the pandemic because we thought like everything was going to collapse, and it was the stupidest shit we ever did. Now that house, we looked at it the other day.
I'm sure.
Now that house is worth $750,000.
Oh my God.
And I think we bought it for $365 or $400. Oh,
You could have paid your Winterville house off.
No shit. No shit. Yeah.
That is another thing I think that is a common misconception amongst having rental property, is that people think that it's just this huge gravy train, and it is not. It is not at all. The monthly benefit to having rental property is
it is if it's paid off, right?
If it's paid off, yes.
But you have to have that financial ability to do that.
Right. Very few people have rental property that's paid off. You don't get to the point where you're making, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 in passive net income until you get to the point where you have, I'd say, probably 10 to 15 properties. Like around here, my 2 rentals, I probably net between the 2 of them $500 a month, which is it's a little something. It's more than not having any passive income, but I certainly can't live off of it. And God forbid something go wrong. 4 months worth of profit, if I have a $2,000 repair, that's gone.
I saw one. I think it's the one that you lived in for a little bit, then you renovated it while you were living there. You paid like $69,000 for it or something like that at the time.
The one, the duplex.
Yeah,
the
so
half duplex.
Yeah, so like when you look at something like that, like 69,000. It's a big number, but that's easily payable off like in 2-3 years for sure. Like, and then once you pay that off, like all that rent's just going straight in your pocket, other than, if something breaks or stuff like that.
Right. So the 2 rental properties that I have are financed with a commercial loan, and I don't make any additional payments towards the principal because the interest rate that I have on those two properties is so low that I'm better off to take the funds that I'm netting and to then use that to purchase another property. But yes, you could take the approach of, I'm gonna, make it a point to pay this off. My financial strategy is if the interest rate is low and the money is cheap to borrow, I want to use as much of the bank's money as possible. Somebody told me one time, if broke is broke. If you're in debt for $10,000 or $100,000, you're still in debt. You're going to go belly up over either one. And so, which obviously kind of has to be taken with a grain of salt. But the concept of that, I thought was...
We did our whole get out of debt
right
thing. Yeah, we did that. And then of course we got back into it. But it's like one of those things where now that we know that we can do it and the steps to do it, and it was all about budgeting at the end of the day. And we had a bunch of friends just you're crazy. Why are you spending thousands of dollars a month on your debt? Just make the minimum payment. I'm like, dude, have you ever opened up your statement and realized oh, I've paid $15,000 on this car so far, but I still owe 20. And I only started out with a balance of 25,000. So it's you're looking at all that stuff, and that's when it kicks you in the ass, and it's I need to change this whole thing. Before we wrap this thing up, any other advice that you would give to maybe an agent that is going through their own slump right now, one that maybe they just hasn't clicked for them yet. I know you said you haven't had that moment, but clearly you're doing pretty good. So any advice you have for a struggling agent?
I would say I am super stoked for 2024 business. I know there are a lot of people that are looking at the outlook over the next 12 to 18 months. And I know there are a lot of people that had a really shitty 2023. There were a lot of markets that did not do well 2023. Thankfully, ours was not one of them, and I had a really good year. But anytime there are shifts in the market, it creates opportunity in the market. And that's where people make big money. That's where you need to really latch on to that market shift and to ride the wave in one direction or the other, because there is endless opportunity in things kind of readjusting and seeing how the chips may fall when the dust settles, and to be in a better position come the end of the year.
Do election years ever affect real estate? Because I feel like this is the year where like, or next year is going to be the year where like people just start like lowering this interest rate, doing this, doing that, just to like stay in office and all that.
Depending on how the election goes, next year has the potential to be a really big year.
But it's like one of those things where you just never know.
Right, you never know. And I'll be honest, this is something I talk a lot about on social media. And when it comes to buying and selling real estate, there is some opportunity there in terms of occasionally people do it because it's an opportunistic thing. But in general, it's not an opportunistic thing. People buy and sell real estate because they need to. And an election is not going to confirm or deny whether or not they need to buy and sell real estate. It'll just become one of those things where like come May, June, all the people that are like teetering will start to grasp onto that as, oh, well, I'm waiting to see what the election does. Because they're really not in the market. They're just kind of like, it's the same objection that I'm getting right now.
It's like really the only thing that's going to change is like tax laws and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm looking at to see what the interest rates do. That just translates to I'm just not ready to do anything. Like if somebody's ready and they can afford to buy or they need to sell, they're going to. It'll just become something that people latch onto in terms of I'm just not right now.
We haven't touched on this yet. What advice do you have for like new home buyers right now? Because I mean, I feel like I see it all the time on social media, especially like people that are our age are just like, you can't buy a house right now because everything's too expensive. But then I always hear about like, oh, well, I'm looking for my forever home, and I'm looking for like, you know, my starter home that's going to be $500,000, and it's my very first home I ever bought. Like, tell me about that. Any advice do you have for new home buyers? Like, I know that because you want the clients that are going to buy the big house, because that's going to be a good commission for you. But advice from just that side of things.
That's such a hard subject because our market is so different than the majority of other markets. Like you could come into our market
What makes it different?
Well, the price. Our average sales price for the county is about $275,000. The state of North Carolina property tax is also relatively low. And so when I make a blanket statement of, oh, well, you can buy a house. Like I sold a house to somebody at the beginning of the year, $250,000 house, young couple. The mortgage payment was $1,600 a month. A lot of people online would look at that and say, well, I mean, I can afford $1,600 a month. I could afford this house in this area, but where they're at, that's not an option.
Well, because that's how it is now. Because like in 2019, we bought our house for $265,000, 3,000 square feet. I think a quarter acre lot. Now our house I think is valued at like $450 or $475, which I'm all for. But like if we were to go buy a house right now, like I don't want to pay $400. Yeah. So I guess it's the tough thing.
It is a really tough thing because my advice to somebody that was local would be totally different to somebody that is in California. Like, especially in states like New York or California.
Well, let's talk about local market. Yeah.
Okay, so
because obviously
market,
if you live here in Greenville, North Carolina, chances are you're not going to be able to afford a penthouse in New York City.
No. Local market, I would say it's not as intimidating as you think that it is. That is the general consensus. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers because those are my peers for the most part, and because that's a lot of what my target demographic is online is young people, and young people are first-time home buyers. It's really not as overwhelming and as intimidating as what you think it is. It's actually a really simple process, and especially with what rent is right now in this area, if you are paying somewhere between $1,400 and $1,600 a month in rent, which I would say a lot of people are, you can afford the mortgage payment on a house.
Because our mortgage is $1,600. Yeah.
So you probably have a really low interest. You probably refinanced really low though.
We sure did.
But you could go out and buy an entry level, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot ish house, and make the numbers work so that they would accommodate that type of monthly payment. And if you're somebody that doesn't have a whole lot of cash, there are North Carolina down payment assistance programs. There, especially right now, while the market is a little bit slow because we're in the thick of winter and going over the holidays.
Because the slower it is, the more grant money they have to give out.
Well, the grant money is allotted there. I I know they run out, the fiscal year ends the 30th of June. So if you're somebody that's going to try to get a grant, then if you're trying to buy in like May-ish, then you might have a problem, but probably not. But right now, when we're in the thick of winter and the market is slow, we can get seller concessions, we can get money towards buying down the rate. Like there's all kinds of strategies that can be employed to make it more accessible for you. You know,
so we're talking about advice for let's say new home buyers. I think back to like when we were buying houses, and I remember my wife. We would walk through a house. She was like, "I don't like this paint color. Not the house for us." Can you talk about like some of that? Like paint color can be changed. Carpets can be changed. Like tell me about that.
That is probably a really big thing with millennials and Gen Z.
It has to be frustrating for you.
It is. It can be really frustrating. Another one is a fence. A lot of people have pets, and I talk to a lot of people that are like, I want a house and it has to have a fence. Fences are expensive. Okay, I will give people that. I just paid an astronomical amount of money for a fence. But that being said, I think, just as a society, are so conditioned to look at something and say, this has to be completely ready to go. And if it's not completely ready to go, I have to go in and make it exactly the way I want it within days or weeks of purchasing this house. I am guilty of that. I am guilty of going into a space and going, this is the vision that I have, and I have to make this vision come to life, and I have to do it immediately. And in reality, owning a home is a years long work in process to make it exactly what you want. And so if you buy something that you don't like the paint color or you don't like the floor, you need to be looking at things. If you are somebody that has a dream and a goal of being a homeowner, you need to be looking at, is this a structurally sound piece of property? Is the electrical updated? Is the plumbing updated? Does it have a new roof? Does it have new windows? Does it need a new HVAC? Like those big ticket items, that's the kind of stuff that you need to be looking at. All of that other piddly shit is stuff that can be done later on for not all that much money and at any time. Like that kind of stuff is
kind of like, are the bones of the house good?
Right.
Yeah, because I know like with me, I have an art background. So like I can walk into a place and be like, oh yeah, this is a blank slate. Like I'm good to go. That wall's pink over there, but it won't be pink for the next 2 weeks. So like, because I feel like that has to be frustrating for you walking someone through a house and you just know that this checks every box off of their list, but they don't want it just because of something aesthetic that they can easily change in 2 days. So anything else, like any other like things like that you run into, like nitpicky type items that maybe buyers just need to like take a step back and think about?
I think cosmetically,
because you couldn't be picky in 2020, right? They were going like that. Can you be picky now?
I think a little bit more. The challenge now is you can be picky, but it's going to cost you. That's the caveat with today's market, is that because things are so much more expensive.
And labor's so high now.
And so I think in terms of cosmetic differences within a house, there are a lot of things that are very small, that are very inexpensive, that can be done to a property that are not difficult, that make a world of a difference.
I did board and batten recently.
World of a difference.
Yeah, I did board and batten on my walls in my, we have a bourbon room, and we just took our old dining room and just converted it into a bourbon room. And it like changed the entire layout of the room. And I think all my materials were under $100. I did it in a week.
I bought a brand new house in July. And brand new house it's a spec house. It's a beautiful home. I love it, but it's very much a blank slate. It's got builder grade everything in it, and I'm going in there like room by room. Like this is what I want to do. I painted the living room. I did board and batten on one of the walls, and it's not like those are things that you get a lot of pushback online. Well, I've got to have all of these extra tools. Nope, not for board and batten. You don't. You can use like liquid nails, and Lowe's will cut the stuff the length and the dimensions that you need it. Same thing with like picture or box trim. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do. I switched out all of the doorknobs and hinges from brushed nickel to black. It's not expensive. It cost me like, I think $280 on Amazon to get
Yeah, you
to
can
do
go to
the
Amazon.
whole house. Amazon is fantastic for stuff like that. Do the whole house, switch from all out to black, makes a world of a difference.
If you need any cheap tools, like a cheap little nail gun, I mean, I ended up getting a nail gun, no air compressor, just battery operated, at Harbor Freight for I think $40. And then like if I need anything bigger, I can go down to Trade It and
Right.
find some stolen tool for $20. So there's so many opportunities that new home buyers can do to save on their purchase, but also make their home into their home, which I think is really important. Where can people find you at? Where can people find Emily at?
You can find me on TikTok.
Yeah, tell us all.
At Realtor Emily McAllister. We did the What Up Fools intro because that's how I intro most of my TikTok posts. And
Awesome. So pretty much TikTok, that's where we can find you.
TikTok and Instagram.
And then if we are in the housing market and we want to buy a house, we'll find you through there too.
Yep,
Beautiful.
all my websites are linked.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Emily, I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Appreciate it.